Hey everybody, welcome to the video. It's Friday, August 27th, and we're breaking down this massive 15-game set that we have over on DraftKings today. That's all 30 teams. We have good pitching today, especially up top. We have quite a few good stacks to talk about, so I'm definitely looking forward to breaking this one down. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that, but you do get access to a lot of extra content. And since we're close to the end of the month, if you do sign up, I will hit that refund button for you so you can get this last week for free as long as you stay signed up on September 1st. And in September, we'll have 3 sports going on. We have football, NASCAR, and baseball, so a lot of things to be excited about. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by Prize Picks. I'm sure most of you know what it is by now, but if you don't, it's daily fantasy sports simplified, just you versus the projections. There's no sharks, 150 max contests, or salary cap restrictions or anything like that. Just you versus the props that they offer each and every single day. And as of right now, for your new signee over on PrizePicks, you can use code CPEN to get a free money bonus. That's an instant deposit match up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we'll start with pitching and then move on to the bats. And we have plenty of good options today. I think in cash games, I'm probably double spending up for pitcher, which I feel like I say each and every single time. And I always say this each and every single time as well. But they make it way too easy to double spend it for pitcher and still get really good offensive pieces in your lineup. Like there's so many guys, like just for example, Tyler Naquin, Michael Brantley, and a couple of other players, like each and every single slate. Miles Straw is one. Like they are so cheap every single time. They hit in good spots in the order, and they've been playing very well, but their price tags barely move whatsoever. So they just have so many guys that they don't fluctuate the price tags enough, so it makes it quite easy to do so. I think in season pass, it hasn't been this easy, but this year I don't know what's going on. But anyway, we'll start up top here with Shane McClanahan, $10,700. He may be the most expensive pitcher on the slate, but he's not my most favorite, but he's definitely a very elite option. I think he's a nice pivot off of the very chalky Garrett Cole and Aaron Nola today, because I would much rather play both of those pitchers. I mean, Garrett Cole gets a pitcher-friendly park. Aaron Nola gets an Arizona team that kind of sucks versus righties, so I think it just makes way more sense to go with those guys, especially in cash games. But McClanahan is definitely a good option here. I will say he has a massive, massive park downgrade going from the Trop, one of the best places to pitch in all of baseball, to one of the most hitter-friendly parks in all of baseball in Camden Yards. He just faced Baltimore recently. I believe it was his most recent start, actually. And they were pitching at home in the Trop, and he only had like a upper 2s to very low 3s implied team total against him. Now it's a 4 over in Camden Yards. So that just kind of goes to show what the park shift can kind of do to things like that. But he's still a very heavy favorite, 6K prop over in Vegas. I believe he's faced Baltimore 3 times this season. Each start went well. I think he scored 23, 26, and 25. And actually, his best start of those 3 starts was actually in Camden Yards. So I mean, I think he's definitely a fine tournament option. It's just, there's definitely concerns to be had. Baltimore's a better team versus lefties, but his xFIP, SIERA, ERA all look good. 20.5% carry. Doesn't really walk too many guys just compared to Garrett Cole and Nola. It's a little bit more than actually all these pitchers. He actually has the highest walk rate of the ones we're going to talk about, but I mean, 7.8% is not insanely bad. Doesn't give up too much power. Gets a good amount of ground balls. Baltimore is better versus lefties than they are versus righties, but I mean, the strikeout should be there for him. I think he's a good pivot off of what should be chalkier pitchers right below him. And then dropping down to Garrett Cole, $10,500. I assume he'll be the most chalky pitcher on the entire slate. If you're playing cash games, he's going to be the first guy I plug in, and he'll more than likely be my highest owned pitcher as well. But only a 3.42 implied team total. Not a huge favorite here. It's actually a good pitching matchup on both sides, Sean Manaea and Garrett Cole, though I'm definitely going to give Garrett Cole the edge there. And an 8K prop over in Vegas. He's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. If you're looking at his numbers on the season, xFIP, SIERA, ERA all below 3, close to a 35% K rate, only walking 5% of batters that he's seeing, over 12 Ks per 9, not allowing too much power. Ground ball rate's a little bit higher than his fly ball rate, doesn't really give up too many homers, and this is definitely a nice Park 2 pitching compared to Yankee Stadium. So I think Garrett Cole, $10,500. He should be the most expensive pitcher on the slate. Not sure why he's not, so given the fact that he's not, I think he actually comes in at a value, even though he's $10,500, but definitely love Garrett Cole quite a bit. He's my highest projected pitcher on the slate. Then Aaron Nola, $10,200. If you compare both of these guys together, I would feel very, very good about that in cash games today. The Arizona team does really struggle versus right-handed pitching. They're better versus lefties, but versus righties, some of their splits are just pretty poor for the most part, striking out close to 25% of the time. They do walk quite a bit, but only a 135 team ISO, which is absolutely awful, an 80 WRC plus, and a 294 WOBA. I should mention Garrett Cole. The matchup versus Oakland isn't like a cakewalk or anything. Like, they actually have some pretty good numbers, but it's Garrett Cole, and I always give the edge to elite pitching. But Aaron Nola, he's kind of a bit up or down this year. Like, he has these games where he's flawless, scores over 30 fantasy points, and there's some games where he can kind of get hammered a little bit. So I guess we'll see what kind of Aaron Nola we get, but only 3.3 implied team total against him. Very heavy favorite, 7K prop over in Vegas, close to a 30% K rate on the season. xFIP, SIERA, ERA, Well, the XFIP and Sierra are good. The ERA is not very good, but the XFIP and Sierra being a run lower means he's getting a little bit unlucky this year. He is giving up power, I will say, close to a 176 ISO, but we just went over it. Like, Arizona has absolutely zero power versus right-handed pitching this season, so I think Nola at 10-2 is going to be one of the best pitching options on the slate. I'd put these guys in tiers. I would say Garrett Cole is 1A and Aaron Nola is 1B. And then dropping down to Joe Musgrove, $9,600. It's definitely a teardrop going from McClanahan, Garrett Cole, and Nola down to Joe Musgrove, but he's been having a pretty good season as well. I know he can be a bit more hit or miss, but he gets a good matchup here versus LA. There's no team total out yet, but outside of a couple bats here, LA is not a lineup that you should really be too scared of. We'll see if Justin Upton is back in the lineup tonight and is dealing with that calf issue, but on the season, Musgrove, ERA looks good. XFIP and Sierra both really solid around 3.5. Over a 28% K rate, not allowing too much power whatsoever. Gets a lot of ground balls. Hard contact rate only at 28%. Doesn't allow too many homers. I think Musgrove is a fine pivot because, I mean, when you can get Garrett Cole and Aaron Nola at similar price points, people are going to obviously click on their names more so, which I totally agree. I will too. I'll have more exposure to them. But Joe Musgrove is definitely a fine option in tournaments today. I mean, you could play him in cash games, but I would just try to find the extra money to get in Garrett Cole and Nola. Then if you're looking for a cheaper SP2, we have Logan Gilbert at $7,700, who draws a pretty soft matchup versus the Kansas City Royals. Only a 3 3/4 implied team total against them. Pretty heavy favorite, actually, in a 5.5K prop over in Vegas. And his numbers on the season, I realize some of these pop up red, but when you're comparing them to some of the better pitchers in baseball, I mean, someone's going to have the worst numbers here, and that just happens to be Gilbert. But these are actually pretty solid. Like, his ERA is awful, above 5, but he has an XFIP below 4, Sierra on 3.5, a 26.6% K rate, not really walking too many guys. The power's a bit up there, and he does give it some fly balls, but this is a Kansas City team where they don't really strike out too much. They don't really possess too much power either, so at $7,700, I definitely think he's a good cheap option. And if you're going for expensive stacks today, he's probably the guy that can help you unlock those. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for pitching, so we'll move right over to today's stacks. First thing we want to talk about, it's going to be the Tampa Bay Rays on the road, which is a massive park boost. I talked about being a negative for Shane McClanahan, but it's definitely a positive for all these Rays bats getting out of the Trop, going to Camden Yards, one of the best places to hit in all of baseball. We have a team total close to 6 here, and we get to face Matt Harvey, who I think we all know is not a very good pitcher. He had that little stretch recently where he's having some pretty good games, but he's kind of tailed back off, and he's a guy that we can definitely pick on. I prefer lefties versus Harvey. He can kind of be annoying versus righties sometimes, but feel free to stack the entire lineup here. The Orioles bullpen is not very good. Very hitter-friendly park. We're on the road. You get the guaranteed thing at bats, and I mean, they're kind of expensive. The first 3 guys are above 5K, but outside of them, we're talking like mid 4K to low 4K range with the dirt cheap Kevin Kiermaier at the end. So not the easiest stack to roster due to their price points, but if you use a Logan Gilbert and find a cheaper stack to pair these guys with or some cheaper one-offs, I think we'd make it work. But I love Pennell out today, one of the best plays in the entire slate, $5,400. Not a high batting average guy, but just have a little bit 360 and a 270 ISO and absolutely crushes right-handed pitching. Wander Franco's fine. Nelson Cruz, prefer him versus lefties, but if you're stacking the Rays, it's kind of hard to leave off a guy like Nelson Cruz. Austin Meadows, love Meadows today. Him and Brandon Lowe are my 2 favorite plays in the Tampa Bay Rays. I love this price point quite a bit. Like, I feel like he's the same exact play as Brandon Lowe. Like, their numbers are very, very similar. Low batting averages in the 230s, but they both have ISOs above 220, and they absolutely crush right-handed pitching. So love Meadows, love Brandon Lowe. The rest of the lineup is playable, but if I had to pick 2 in this entire lineup, Lowe and Meadows are definitely my favorite options today. And moving on up to the Toronto Blue Jays, they are on the road in Detroit facing off versus Matt Manning, a pitcher that has a 12% K rate on the season, about a 7% walk rate, allows close to a 175 ISO and close to a 40% hard contact rate. And I know the Blue Jays are down George Springer, but this is still a very good offense. Bo Bichette, Marcus Semien, Vlad, Teoscar Hernandez, Corey Dickerson. After Dickerson, it kind of falls off a little bit, but we have Reese McGuire as a cheap catcher today, who I could see being quite chalky. I definitely like the lefties versus Manning, but you can use pretty much everybody here. We have a team total north of 5. Detroit's bullpen, well, it's maybe not the worst in the league these days. It's still not amazing, but definitely like the entire lineup here. Team total north of 5, and Bichette's pretty cheap at $4,700. I mean, I know he's not dirt cheap, but leading off for the Blue Jays, not a bad price point. Love Corey Dickerson's price. Like, if you had to pick a cash game guy here, Corey Dickerson, if you are spending it for a pitcher today, it's just cheap exposure right in the middle of the order for one of the best offenses in baseball. Then going on to the Boston Red Sox, I feel like I've talked about them for a week or 2 straight now, but they keep drawing really good matchups. They're away from Fenway, which kind of sucks, but Cleveland's not the worst place to hit in all of baseball. They have a team total of 5. And Logan Allen has really struggled this season. We don't have like a huge sample size for him because he did get sent down for a while. But his numbers on the season aren't pretty. It's only a 22 inning sample size, but he's got an ERA really close to 10. His XFIP is about half that, but even then that's close to 6. Only a 13.9% K rate, double-digit walk rate, giving up a 338 ISO, a 44 WOBA. The ground ball rate's kind of high, but over 3.5 homers allowed per 9 and a 40% hard contact rate. He's in bad versus lefties and righties. I obviously prefer the righties here, but the entire lineup is going to be in play. Kike at $4,300, I think that's an excellent cash game play. The problem is he's no longer eligible in the outfield, so you're going to have to probably decide between Kike or Pennell in cash games today. But Kike's over 1,000, or I think he's exactly $1,000 cheaper. So I'm loving Kike today. Love him versus lefties over a 200 ISO. Kyle Schwarber, I know it's a lefty on lefty matchup, but I'm not scared of that in tournaments. He'll see it ready at some point anyway. Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers, JD Martinez. It kind of sucks that Hunter Renfroe is going to be out because the guy just absolutely crushes lefties. So that's a little bit of a hit on the stack, but I think all these guys are going to be playable. The team total of only 5 seems a bit low. I think we're going to see that closer to 5.5 time first pitch happens, but I'm definitely a big fan of the Red Sox versus Logan Allen today. And then dropping down to the Houston Astros, they get a matchup versus Glenn Otto, who has not made a Major League start yet this year, so I'm definitely going to give the edge to the Astros bats. And while they are quite expensive, we do have a few guys that I think are good as one-offs if you can't afford a full-on stack here, like Michael Brantley, only $4,000. I think he's an excellent cash game guy, batting over 300 on the season. Like, he's one of those guys I mentioned earlier where DraftKings just does not price him correctly. He was in the low 3K range. They've definitely got a little bit better now. He's close to $4,000. Well, he is $4,000. But even then, like, all of his teammates are close to $5,000. So I just don't really understand why he's that cheap. Kyle Tucker's pretty cheap as well. I know he hits lower in the order these days. And Bregman's back, so he kind of got slotted down another spot. But, I mean, the lineup is good. I mean, Jose Altuve, Michael Brantley, Carlos Correa, Jordan Alvarez, Alex Bregman, Yuli Gurriel. It's pretty good when Kyle Tucker can be your 7th hole hitter. Like, this is a very loaded lineup. Even Jake Myers, Martin Maldonado are not terrible, just dirt cheap one-off pieces. If you can't afford the expensive stack, just try to get exposure to them. But definitely a big fan of all the Astros here. These guys hit lefties or righties just fine. And the last thing I want to talk about here is the St. Louis Cardinals on the road in Pittsburgh versus Dylan Peters. And any single time the Cardinals face off versus a lefty, I'm always going to have interest because they actually hit lefties very, very well. I know if you guys watch the videos, you probably get the idea by now. But, I mean, Edmund leading off here, 250 ISO to lefties. Paul Goldschmidt hasn't really showed it yet this year, but in his career, he's always been good versus lefties. Dylan Carlson, not a big ISO guy, but he is batting nearly 350. Arenado batting over 300 with a 349 ISO. O'Neill at 327 ISO. Yadier Molina at 245 ISO. Paul DeJong over a 200. And even Harrison Bader here, the 8-hole hitter, at least projected to be. The batting average is terrible, but a 162 ISO. So these guys actually hit lefties pretty well, and they're not super expensive outside of Goldschmidt or Nolan Arenado. Like, those guys are super expensive, close to $6,000, but the rest of that lineup is definitely pretty easy to fit in your lineups. But with that being said, I think that'll be pretty much it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. And since we're close to the end of the month, I will hit that refund button for you so you can get this last week for free, as long as you stay signed up on September 1st. Don't forget this video was sponsored by Prize Picks. This is you versus the projections, and as of right now, if you use code CPEN, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you tell them I sent you. But I think that'll be pretty much it. I will stop rambling, and I'll see you guys in the next video on Saturday.